Welcome to this episode of Paranormal or Reality. Forests can be beautiful, but when the sun sets, they transform into something much darker. From eerie sounds to mysterious figures lurking in the shadows, forests have been the setting for some of the most chilling encounters ever recorded. In this video, we're uncovering spine-tingling stories of creepy encounters deep in the woods, true tales that will send shivers down your spine. If you're a fan of the mysterious and the unexplained, you won't want to miss this. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. I have a friend who is a trail ranger, basically a ranger who can't get you in trouble. He told me about this time he was gathering illegally placed wildlife cameras and knocking down hunting stands, feeders, and blinds with another actual ranger. The other ranger wasn't feeling well, so he said he was going to head back as it's a 1-hour ATV ride. Friend finished up the last one when he heard voices. Keep in mind he's far off the beaten path. He called out and no one replied. As it was getting dark, he started to head back and found that his ATV wouldn't start. He then noticed that the battery was not connected anymore. He reconnected it and started to drive, but it wasn't going fast at all. Less than a half-mile later, the whole thing died. He radioed back, basically saying, "Hey guys, I need someone to come pick me up." They told him they would, but it would be an hour. He asked if the other guy got back, and they said no. He settled down and started a small fire, but before long he heard voices again. It's dark. He's not happy. The voices sound like an argument now. Someone was angry and yelling at someone else who sounded more scared. He called out and asked if anyone needed help. The voices didn't seem to care. He guessed they had to be less than 1,000 feet away. He radioed again, and they said they were having trouble finding what path he might be on and haven't left yet. He asked them just to get the other ranger to tell them about where they are, because he left with the iPad that had the map. They said he still isn't back. About 3 more minutes go by, and he hears the voices start up again. He decides to walk to them, hoping maybe they can stop being drunk assholes and maybe have a map. He walked in their direction, but the voices seemed to be getting further as he got closer. Finally, after 20 minutes, he gave up and walked back. He got a radio call, and they said the other guy was found passed out, covered in vomit, and was being taken to the hospital. But he crossed off everywhere they found a stand, so they have a general idea where he is. Then the radio died. Then the voices came back. Bored out of his mind, he decided to listen to what they were arguing about, picking up things like, "Well, it wasn't yours to take. I don't fucking care. You knew better," and so on. His guess was 2 hunters arguing over a kill. Then he heard the one shout something intelligible, then silence. The bang, a gunshot. He doused his fire and hid. After that, he heard nothing. Just his breathing for the next half hour until he saw ATV lights. He told the guy picking him up everything, and they called back. They had people looking for 3 hours and found nothing. They came back the next day with police and dogs. After about an hour, a shallow grave was found, and in it was a long dead man who had clearly been shot in the face. Thing was, it was a skeleton who was there for years. So either the argument he heard just ended with a bang and both parties went home last night, or he heard the murder of someone from years ago. My grandpa had a hunting buddy in the 70s who was basically a hermit in the woods of the Pacific Northwest. He was staying with him in his cabin deep in the Cascade Mountains during a hunting trip. No running water, no electricity, miles away from the nearest town or paved road. His cabin was built on stilts and on an incline. It had a 10-foot balcony from the base of the bottom of the stilts, with no stairs or ladder to climb up on. My grandpa claims that he knew this man for a long time, and said that he didn't have the personality to lie. I've also known my grandpa to never be one for bullshit. One night during the trip, they were relaxing at the cabin after a hunt, and his buddy tells him that Sasquatch is in the area and to be careful going out at night. Thinking he was pulling his leg, my grandpa chuckled and didn't think much about it. His friend then put on a very serious face and grabbed a few pieces of fruit, bread, and jerky and placed them in a bowl. He took the bowl out onto the balcony and set it on the edge and said, "It'll be empty in the morning," and then went to bed. It was an open-floor, single-room cabin, about 300 square feet. My grandpa had a cot set up near the balcony window and was woken up in the middle of the night by rustling outside. He peeked through the window and saw the bowl, empty, and to this day still claims he saw 4 fingers resting on the edge of the balcony just before letting go. He never went hunting in that area again. Buddy in the 70s who was basically a hermit in the woods of the Pacific Northwest. He was staying with him in his cabin deep in the Cascade Mountains during a hunting trip. No running water, no electricity, miles away from the nearest town or paved road. His cabin was built on stilts and on an incline. It had a 10-foot balcony from the base of the bottom of the stilts with no stairs or ladder to climb up on. My grandpa claims that he knew this man for a long time and said that he didn't have the personality to lie. I've also known my grandpa to never be one for bullshit. One night during the trip, they were relaxing at the cabin after a hunt, and his buddy tells him that Sasquatch is in the area and to be careful going out at night. Thinking he was pulling his leg, my grandpa chuckled and didn't think much about it. His friend then put on a very serious face and grabbed a few pieces of fruit, bread, and jerky and placed them in a bowl. He took the bowl out onto the balcony and set it on the edge and said, "It'll be empty in the morning," and then went to bed. It was an open-floor single-room cabin, about 300 square feet. My grandpa had a cot set up near the balcony window and was woken up in the middle of the night by rustling outside. He peeked through the window and saw the bowl, empty, and to this day still claims he saw 4 fingers resting on the edge of the balcony just before letting go. He never went hunting in that area again. I had a friend some years ago, and he and I would spend a fair share of our free time just hanging around his kitchen table or mine. This friend was morbidly obese, but got around good considering his physical limitations. However, he passed away several years ago now, at the age of 54. This was a good 14 years longer than he was expected to live in his condition, but still his death was unexpected and sudden. We talked about many things, but one thing I remembered well was his desire to have his body's ash poured into the Gulf of Mexico. After he passed, his son hired me to clean and repair the house so it could be sold. My friend often said the home he lived in was a curse and a sort of self-imposed prison. Having bought my first home at 20, I understood exactly what he meant by this. Long story short, after me and a small crew removed all the items left behind in the house, we arrived at a point where all that was left in our way was a few odds and ends that family members had interest in, but not enough interest to pick the items up so we could paint and spackle the room. Among the last items in the house was what I had thought was a thick book, maybe a Bible. This item sat by itself on a fireplace mantle, and for some reason didn't get collected and disposed of when we did the trash out. So one evening I found myself working alone, cleaning floors in the rooms we had finished. At some point I walked to the fireplace to inspect this book, and much to my horror I find it's not a book, but the receptacle containing the ashes of my friend. There, left in his prison, not even amongst the items to be picked up. An afterthought, everything that remained of my friend on this earth was sitting alone on a mantle. No one cared enough to take them out of there, or even to have the ashes placed in a nice urn, just left gathering dust on the mantle. I believe in paranormal experiences. I have personally bore witness to unexplained occurrences, but I have never been frightened by the thought of such things. In this house, I had spent many happy hours there with my friend and was comfortable there. But at that moment, as I stood there in disbelief at what I had found, my friend screamed at me so loud I felt it reverberate throughout my body. This scared the hell out of me and I ran. I ran so fast I didn't lock the house back up or turn off the lights. I just got the hell out of there. But once in my ragged out junky car, I realized what had to be done. I would have to make the 12+ hour trip to the Gulf Coast to give my pal's remains to the ocean, since he had told me this wish many times. I didn't think my vehicle would make the trip, and this was the middle of the pandemic and the most financially difficult time of my life. But I had to do it. The worst part was walking back in that house, which now for the first time felt cold and unwelcoming. We had ourselves an adventure, I can tell you. Me and my buddy headed to the beach for the last time together. The ride home seemed lonesome without his remains, which looking back is strange in itself. Going down felt oddly like an adventure. Not knowing if my old truck was going to give up and having to pinch every dime I had. The way back felt sad, like I had been left behind in a kind of living hell, and the uncertainty that had been exciting before now filled me with dread and fear. It took several years to shake that feeling. and now it's coming back.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.